The wind howled through the shattered windows of the church, carrying with it the scent of ash and something far more sinister. Beneath the flickering candlelight, 50 survivors knelt in silence, their breaths barely louder than the rustle of paper-thin leaves outside. This was not a prayer of peace. It was a prayer for endurance, the kind whispered before a storm. And the storm had been raging for 2 years. Father Elias stood at the altar, not dressed in robes, but in a weathered military jacket. Once a priest, now a reluctant leader. He looked over the congregation, past hollow eyes and dirt-streaked cheeks, and fixed his gaze on the radio sitting beside the pulpit. It crackled, faintly. A whisper of static. "The signal came from grid 12, said Marla, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. She was the one who found it. Younger than most, maybe 25, and one of the few left with working tech skills. "It's real." A voice, clear. "They said there's a safe route north. A zone, free from infection. They called it New Hope." A ripple passed through the survivors, part hope, part fear. Most hadn't heard a voice from beyond the zone in over a year. "You sure it wasn't a trap?" asked Theo, a burly former firefighter whose left leg limped with the memory of a past encounter with the undead. "The last time we followed a voice, 5 of us didn't come back." Marla nodded grimly. "I ran it through the spectrum filters. The voice is steady. No looping, no anomalies. It's not a bait loop." Father Elias didn't speak right away. He turned to the cracked stained glass window behind him, gazing out at the city's husk. Once known as Southridge, it had become the last dead zone after the final outbreak. No supply routes. No military support. Just concrete skeletons and the things that roamed them. "We can't survive here much longer," Elias finally said. "We're running out of clean water. The solar cells are dying. The old walls won't keep them out forever." A hush fell again. They all knew it. Every night, the groans came closer. Every morning, the barriers were weaker. "But moving means crossing the red line," said Lena, clutching her daughter to her chest. "The horde nests there. We saw them last month, thousands." Marla shook her head. "That's what makes it perfect. No one expects humans to try and move through the worst zone. If we time it right, we could avoid their swarm path." Theo exhaled slowly. "So it's faith or fear, huh?" "No," Elias said, standing straighter. "It's both. But fear without action is surrender. And faith without planning is suicide." The survivors exchanged looks, worn and weathered. The decision wasn't easy, but none of them had illusions anymore. This church, sacred though it was, would become a tomb if they stayed. A sudden pounding echoed from the side door. 3 loud bangs. Pause. 2 more. The coded knock. Everyone froze. Elias motioned to Theo, who unholstered a silent bolt rifle and crept toward the door. On the other side, someone whispered, "It's me. Jacob." Theo opened it cautiously. A bloodied man stumbled inside, clutching a map soaked in sweat and dust. Jacob was a scout, one of the few who dared venture beyond the perimeter. "They're moving," he gasped. "The horde, they're not just wandering. They're migrating. Like, something's pushing them south." Marla paled. "You mean toward us?" "No," Jacob said, pulling the map from his satchel and slamming it onto a table. "Past us. Through the red line. They're leaving the zone." A chill settled in the room. For 2 years, the undead had moved in circles. Random patterns. But migration? That was something new. Something intelligent. Something wrong. "What's driving them?" Elias asked. Jacob hesitated. "I don't know. But I saw something, on the rooftops near the industrial district. A figure. watching. And the horde didn't attack it. They moved around it. The room erupted in nervous whispers. Marla leaned in over the map. If they're going that direction, then that clears a path for us. For how long? Theo asked. Jacob shrugged. A day. Maybe 2. That was enough. Elias turned to the group. Pack only what you need. We move at first light. We follow the signal. We reclaim tomorrow. Outside, the wind blew again, but this time, it carried more than ash. It carried a choice. And by morning, they would all learn whether faith could still survive inside the last dead zone. At sunrise, the city was silent. Not peaceful, just holding its breath. A faint orange glow spilled over the rooftops of Southridge, casting long shadows across broken streets and buildings swallowed by vines and ash. The air carried a strange warmth that morning, one that felt more like a warning than comfort. The survivors moved like ghosts, emerging from the church one by one. Packs slung over shoulders. Weapons tight in hand. They left behind prayer candles still burning in the dark corners, little lights no one dared blow out. Father Elias led from the front, map in hand, rifle on his back. Behind him came Marla with the radio gear in a steel case strapped across her chest. Theo and Lena followed, flanking the group's sides, watching every window and alley. Even the children were silent. They had learned quickly that noise got you killed. They were 50, once part of 1,000 who had tried to hold Southridge. And now, they were walking straight into the belly of the dead. This alley leads to the perimeter breach, Elias whispered to Theo as they ducked under a collapsed sign. We get to the rail yard, then cut through the old red line checkpoint. Theo glanced up. If it's still there. They reached the alley and paused. Across from them, half a wall had crumbled away, revealing the red line zone, a place none of them had entered in over a year. It wasn't just a danger zone. It was a no-go territory. The horde fed there. Nested. Breathed. And now they had to cross it. Marla adjusted the strap on her shoulder. The radio signal's stronger here. That means the source really is beyond this area. Or someone wants us to come through it, Jacob muttered from behind. His wounds had been bandaged, but his eyes stayed sharp, always scanning. I'm telling you, whatever's driving them, it isn't random. Elias raised a hand. No more talking. We move on my mark. In 3. They slipped into the zone like shadows. No words. Just steps. Cautious. Deliberate. They avoided the center streets, moving through overgrown corridors of ivy-covered concrete and rusted fences. Southridge had once been alive with movement. Now, it was a carcass wrapped in silence. Half an hour in, they reached the checkpoint. The military barricade was still there, mostly. The metal gates were bent inward like something massive had torn through, and scorch marks stained the pavement. Theo pointed to the cracked asphalt. Tracks. Not human. Moving east. Elias motioned them through. Let's go. One at a time. The group passed under the shadow of the fallen checkpoint gate, careful not to disturb loose debris. The children moved faster than the adults, barefoot or wrapped in cloth to muffle their steps. Even the youngest, a girl no older than 6, never made a sound. But as the last group crossed, a scream shattered the silence. Everyone froze. A figure burst from a nearby building, pale, fast, and no longer human. Its eyes were wild with hunger, jaw unhinged. One of the scouts, Rami, tried to raise his blade, but it was too late. The creature tackled him, and they both went down hard. Theo reacted first, his bolt rifle fired with a soft thunk. The projectile slammed into the thing's skull, knocking it limp. Rami rolled away, groaning in pain but alive. 2 others rushed to pull him up. Noise, Marla hissed. We have to move, now. The wind changed. In the distance, a low groaning rose, followed by dozens more, then hundreds. Like dry leaves whispering down broken highways. The horde had heard them. They're coming, Jacob said. Everyone run. Elias barked. Follow the blue tags. Blue cloths tied to posts and doors, markers Marla had placed during old scout runs. They weaved through alleyways, tight passages, and abandoned shops. Behind them, the groans grew louder. The dead weren't fast. But they were endless. Marla tossed a small sonic lure behind them, a high-pitched screamer that would draw the horde off their trail. It bought them time. The survivors pushed forward, lungs burning, eyes wide. Every corner could be death. Every shadow might move. Finally, they reached an old subway entrance, half collapsed, but still open. In there. Elias ordered. Down to the rails. The group flooded into the station, boots echoing down concrete steps. The air smelled of damp rot, but it was safety, for now. Once inside, Theo and Jacob pushed a vending machine in front of the door. The groans passed above them like thunder. They were safe. For now. Elias leaned against a wall, breathing hard. Count. Everyone accounted for. Marla nodded. We're down one, Haroon. Didn't make it. A moment of silence. Then Marla whispered, the signal, it's still strong. Just 2 more sectors. Elias looked up the tunnel, where only darkness waited. This place may be the last dead zone, he said quietly. But if we keep moving, maybe it won't be our last breath. The subway tunnels stretched ahead like veins in the earth, dark, silent, and endless. The only light came from a handful of salvaged LED torches, their glow bouncing off damp walls and shattered tiles. Every footstep echoed like a drumbeat in a tomb. Father Elias led the way down the rails, counting each rusted support beam as they passed. The air was thick, like breathing through cloth soaked in mold and rust. Even breathing too loudly felt like a risk. We stay single file, Elias whispered. Quiet. Watch for drop-offs and hibernating nests. Some of them sleep down here. They sleep, a boy named Caleb asked from the middle of the group. He was only 10 but moved like someone twice his age. They don't always move, Theo muttered. But they're never dead. Marla walked just behind Elias, cradling the radio receiver like it was sacred. Signals shifting again. I'm picking up a shortwave bounce, probably reflecting off the metal in the tunnels. That means we're still headed the right direction. How far to the next surface point? Asked Lena, holding her daughter close with one hand and a homemade blade in the other. Maybe a mile, Elias said. If we're lucky. They weren't. A few hundred yards in, they reached a fork. One path sloped down deeper, the other climbed upward toward a crumbled stairwell. A faded maintenance map on the wall was torn in half, but Marla traced the surviving part with her fingers. This leads to East Junction, she whispered. An emergency exit goes above ground, should let us cut through to the north road without crossing the main nest. East Junction's flooded, Jacob said. I scouted it last winter. Knee-deep water, and something moves in it. Marla looked at Elias. It's that or backtrack. No way we go deeper. Elias nodded. We risk East Junction. They turned left, stepping carefully into the narrowing tunnel. Sure enough, after 50 paces, water lapped at their boots. Cold and black, it reflected nothing. The children were lifted or carried as the adults waded in. The silence was broken only by the slosh of water and the faint buzzing of Marla's gear. Then came the ripple. It moved across the water like a breath, from deep in the tunnel behind them. Theo turned fast, raising his rifle. Something's in here. Keep moving, Elias whispered. No sudden. A splash. Then another. Close. Loud. Jacob froze. It's tracking us. Keep going. Elias ordered. Don't run, just fast, steady steps. They moved faster, the water slowing them down. The surface ahead showed the faint glow of daylight through a cracked grating. Escape. Suddenly, from the darkness behind them, something lunged. A shape, long-limbed, bloated, pale with stretched skin and glazed eyes, broke the water's surface with an inhuman shriek. It splashed forward with unnatural speed, dragging itself low like a crocodile. It hit one of the rear scouts, Samir, pulling him under with a sickening splash. No! Lena screamed. Theo fired, the bolt striking true, but the thing didn't stop. A second creature emerged. Then a third. Panic broke the line. The group surged toward the light, dragging children, helping the wounded. Marla held the radio above her head, her other hand gripping the rail for balance. Jacob turned and lit a Molotov from his pack, hurling it back into the tunnel. It hit the water and burst into a sheet of fire, momentarily stopping the creatures. Elias reached the grating first. He and Theo slammed into it with their shoulders, forcing it open enough for people to squeeze through. One by one, the survivors emerged into a parking garage half swallowed by vines and rot. They pulled Lena and her daughter out just as one of the pale creatures slammed into the grating behind them. Marla tossed a flashbang behind her before Theo sealed the gate again. A burst of light. Silence returned. They lay there for a few moments, breathless, soaked, and shaking. Samir was gone. Those weren't normal infected, Marla said quietly. No, Elias agreed. They were something worse. Jacob wiped blood from his arm. They didn't move like the others. No moaning. No mindless chasing. They hunted. They're learning, Theo said. Elias stood slowly and looked across the garage. An open stairwell led up to the street. Beyond that, a long-abandoned police station that still looked mostly intact. We regroup there, he said. Rest, rearm, and plan. We're not just surviving anymore. We're being studied. And whoever sent that signal, Marla added, knows exactly what they're leading us into. Above them, the sky was cloudy, and the wind whispered across the ruins. The surface had changed while they were underground. And so had the rules of survival. The police station stood like a forgotten sentinel, its stone face cracked but solid, untouched by the overgrowth that devoured most of the city. A rusted flagpole leaned at an angle, its banner long gone. Inside, broken desks and scattered reports littered the floors, but the steel-lined walls remained strong. For the first time in days, the survivors had a roof and 4 solid walls between them and the undead. Elias sat in what was once the dispatch room, studying a faded map pinned to a bulletin board. Marla crouched beside him, the radio console open in front of her, wires tangled like veins. She adjusted the dial carefully. The signal's different now, she murmured. Still on shortwave, but someone changed the frequency. Can you trace it? Elias asked. Marla shook her head. Not exactly. But I can track signal strength. And this one's close. Real close. How close? She adjusted a dial, and the speaker crackled. A soft voice came through. If you're hearing this, you're not alone. Sector 9. North Bridge. 36 hours. There's still a future. Don't give up. Then silence. The voice was male. Calm. Measured. Not panicked. Not desperate. And real. Jacob leaned in from behind. It's a trap. Has to be. Who broadcasts hope in a place like this? Marla turned. Someone who wants to be found. Theo entered the room, wiping grime from his hands. We've secured the lower level. Reinforced doors. A water tank still functional. Might hold us for a few days if we need. Elias nodded. Good. But we won't be here that long. He looked back at the radio. We leave tonight. We move toward that signal. A tense silence followed. We're not ready, Lena said from the hallway. We just lost Samir. Everyone's shaken. And every second we wait gives the horde time to move, Elias replied. We have to act before they shift again. What if we split the group? Jacob offered. Small scout team goes ahead. Confirms the message. If it's a trap, the rest stay safe. Elias paused, considering. Who goes? Jacob stepped forward. Me. Marla, to track the signal. Theo, for cover. Theo grunted. Figured. Marla nodded. Give me 15 minutes. I'll rewire the booster and pack light. Lena placed a hand on Elias's arm. And if they don't come back? Then we find another way, Elias said softly. But we can't live in fear anymore. We either move, or we rot. By sundown, the scout team stood at the edge of the ruins, packs secured, weapons drawn. The city ahead was darker than usual, as if the sun refused to touch this part of the world anymore. 36 hours, Elias reminded them. If there's no sign of you by then, we assume the worst. Jacob smirked. Cheerful, as always. They disappeared into the city's bones, swallowed by steel and silence. Back at the station, Elias stood watch at the second-floor window, scanning the horizon. The children slept in rows on mats pulled from the holding cells. Lena kept her daughter close, reading from a weathered storybook with half its pages missing. Then, something strange. A light. Faint, blinking, far off across the skyline. A pattern. 3 short flashes, pause, 2 long ones. Elias tensed. That wasn't lightning. And it wasn't random. Morse code. We. See. You. Elias's breath caught. He didn't tell the others, not yet. Across the city, Jacob led the trio down a collapsed freeway, sidestepping rusted-out cars and skeletal remains. Every so often, the wind carried distant groans, but the path remained clear. Marla's receiver pinged softly. It's getting stronger. Maybe a mile ahead. Theo raised his rifle, scanning rooftops. Still think someone friendly sent this? No, Jacob said. But we need to know who. As they passed under a crumbling overpass, they found a corpse. Fresh. Not decomposed. Face down. Civilian clothes. A broken transmitter still clutched in one hand. Someone didn't want this message to get out, Theo muttered. Marla crouched beside it, examining the device. This wasn't broken by accident. It was smashed. A shadow moved above them. Theo raised his rifle instantly. Top left, third window. Nothing. Just glass. Or was it? Let's keep moving, Jacob said tightly. Eyes up. They pushed forward, entering a narrow street lined with wrecked storefronts and overturned barricades. Halfway through, Marla stopped. Signal's peaking, she said. It's coming from that building, the one with the comms dish. They approached slowly. No movement. No sound. Inside, the building was stripped, wires torn from walls, lights broken, old tech scattered across the floor. On the second level, they found the transmitter. Still active. Still blinking. But no one was there. Theo looked around, uneasy. Why leave it running? Jacob walked to the edge of the room and looked down into the alley. What he saw made him freeze. Below, in perfect silence, a group of infected stood still, not moving, not groaning, just watching. They weren't wild. They were waiting. Jacob turned back to the others, voice low. We've walked into something we don't understand. And somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching them. The silence inside the transmitter room felt too perfect. No wind. No rats. No creaking floorboards. Just the soft pulse of the radio, blinking like a heartbeat in the dark. Jacob backed away from the window, breathing hard. We're not alone, he whispered. They're watching us. Marla looked up from the radio. Who? Infected don't just stand there. They don't coordinate. Theo moved to the door, checked the stairwell, then slammed it shut with a rusted bolt. They're not climbing. Yet. Outside, in the alley, the infected remained motionless, 8 of them. Pale, silent, still. Like statues of rot. They stood shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted slightly, as if waiting for a signal. Something's controlling them, Jacob said. Marla was already tearing the transmitter apart. No one's here. But this is still powered. The battery pack's wired to loop the message. It's a decoy. Meant to pull someone in. Theo looked at Jacob. We're the bait. Then came the sound, a scraping above. All 3 of them froze. Not from below. From the roof. Theo moved fast, slamming the window shut just as a figure landed on the balcony above them, hard. It wasn't infected. It moved too smoothly. Wore scavenged gear. A mask. And a rifle. Whoever it was, they didn't fire. Just stared. Down. Jacob shouted, pulling Marla to the floor. Theo raised his weapon, but the figure was already gone, vanished into the shadows above. A second later, something hissed through the air and landed in the room, a small canister. Gas. Out. Now. Jacob grabbed Marla and kicked the back door open, leading them into a stairwell half filled with smoke. Behind them, the transmitter room was flooding with white mist. Whatever that figure wanted, they didn't plan on asking nicely. They sprinted down the stairwell, boots clanging on metal. At the base, a steel door had been chained shut, but Theo smashed through with a pry bar just as the gas caught up to them. The trio burst into the alley, but the infected were gone. Gone. No bodies. No blood. Just empty concrete and eerie stillness. They were never real, Marla whispered. Or they were being pulled out the moment we noticed them. Theo scanned the rooftops. We're not being attacked. Yet, Jacob finished. They made their way through side streets, staying out of view. At the edge of an old bus terminal, they took cover and assessed. We've been followed, Marla said, eyes darting. Not just followed, Theo added. Tested. Whoever's behind that signal, they're trying to see how we react. Jacob looked at the map, then pointed to an old shopping complex north of their location. That's the only tall structure left nearby. If there's someone broadcasting, they'll need height. Power. And line of sight, Marla said. We go there next. Back at the police station, Elias was awake, his fingers tapping against the wood of the desk. The others slept. But he couldn't. Not after seeing the light signal. He kept the Morse translation on paper beside him, "We see you." He hadn't told Lena. Or the others. Not yet. Not until he had answers. In the corner, little Caleb stirred from sleep and wandered over, rubbing his eyes. "Can't sleep?" the boy asked. "Not really," Elias replied softly. Caleb looked out the window. "You think they'll come back?" "They will," Elias said with a forced smile. "They're stronger than they know." The boy hesitated. Sometimes I hear voices outside. At night. But they're not zombies. Elias turned to him, frowning. Voices? Like people. Whispering. But never close. Just, watching. Elias leaned in. You haven't told anyone? The boy shrugged. Didn't want them to worry. But it's like, someone's listening when we talk. The priest's blood ran cold. Go back to bed, Caleb. But Elias didn't move. He stared out into the ruins, wondering how many eyes were out there, hidden in the night. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Elsewhere, deep beneath the city, a room glowed with monitors. Dozens of feeds, from rooftop drones, old city security cams, and hidden motion detectors. All pointed toward one thing. The survivors. A figure in a white coat leaned over a console, watching Jacob, Marla, and Theo on the screen. Team B made contact, a voice said over comms. They're faster than the last group. They're smarter too, the figure replied. And she, he pointed to Marla, almost traced us. Reinforce the decoy zone. We can't afford another breach. And the church group? The man smiled. They'll make it to Sector 9. That's where we'll see what they're really made of. He shut off the screen, plunging the room into darkness. The storm came quickly. Thunder rolled over the skyline as Jacob, Marla, and Theo approached the edge of the northern sector. Winds howled between gutted towers, scattering ash and dust through the streets like a storm of bones. They moved low and fast, soaked to the skin, hearts pounding from more than the cold. The mall ahead was a dead monolith, glass shattered, roof collapsed in places. Nature had tried to reclaim it, ivy draped across broken signs, and small trees grew from the cracks in concrete. But something else had claimed it first. The lights were on. Weak. Flickering. But real. Marla stopped dead. That shouldn't be possible. Power's been down for years. Unless someone rebuilt the grid, Jacob muttered. Theo scanned the rooftop. I see no movement. But if I were running an op, this is where I'd do it. They crept closer, entering through a side entrance half buried under debris. The inside was eerily clean. Not pristine, but cleaned. Cleared of bodies. Organized. Lanterns hung from hooks. Dust had been swept from the floor. Someone lived here. They moved deeper into the structure. Past old food courts and ruined storefronts, deeper into the old security wing. And that's when they found the door. Heavy. Steel. With a biometric lock and keypad. This is new tech, Marla said, kneeling beside it. Government level or higher. She looked back at the others. Whoever's in here, they had access to military systems. Theo backed up. I've got a bad feeling about this. Just then, a soft click. The door opened. Not a noise from the other side. Just the invitation. They exchanged a glance, then entered. Inside was a stark white hallway with humming lights and vents still circulating air. They walked silently, cautiously. The corridor split into a control room, filled with humming monitors, active displays, and surveillance feeds showing different sectors of the city, including the police station where Elias and the others were still camped. Oh my God, Marla whispered. They've been watching us the whole time. Theo pointed to one monitor. Look. A camera inside the station. Inside the cell block. It zoomed in slowly, not automated, like someone was controlling it in real time. Someone's watching now. Jacob leaned over the console. Check this out. He pressed a key and brought up a live feed labeled, Sector 9 Bridge, Countdown, 14 hours 22 minutes and 56 seconds. A digital clock ticked down. 14 hours. 22 minutes. Marla's voice trembled. They want us to go there. They've been hurting us from the start. Then the room's intercom crackled. A man's voice. Calm. Familiar. You've come far. And that matters. Not everyone makes it this far. But you still don't understand what's at stake. The monitors all changed, now showing experiments. Human survivors in cages. Infected being restrained. Some hybrid of both, twitching, whispering, still human enough to beg for release. We're not your enemy. We're preparing humanity for what comes next. Jacob slammed his fist on the console. Where are you? Show yourself. We already have, the voice said. The city is your crucible. The test of who deserves to build the future. Then silence. All the monitors went dark. And from behind a mirrored wall, a single door hissed open. Jacob raised his weapon. They're inviting us in again. Theo shook his head. No. Not this time. We get out. We warn the others. Marla hesitated, then pulled a hard drive from the console. I've got enough. Surveillance footage, audio logs. If we can broadcast this. They turned and ran. Back at the police station, Elias watched the horizon. The sun had not risen. Only the gray. The survivors were tense. Sleep had grown thinner, conversations quieter. The wind now carried something new, not groans, not footsteps, but music. Faint. Classical. A piano. Lena noticed too. That's Beethoven? It's coming from the north, Elias said grimly. Caleb pulled on his sleeve. That's the same direction the others went. They moved to the rooftop and found an old weather radio with speakers, one of theirs, now hijacked. A voice came through again. Sector 9. 36 hours. Hope remains. But Elias noticed something chilling. The voice wasn't live. It was his voice. From 3 nights ago. Recorded. Altered. Looped. Someone's using me, he whispered. To lure more people in. Near the mall, the trio reached a safe distance and collapsed inside a hollowed-out gas station. Marla was already patching the drive into her receiver. I can broadcast on the old FEMA band, she said. It'll get picked up by any survivors out there, maybe even shortwave across zones. Theo watched the dark sky. If we send this, we're telling the world what's happening here. Exactly, Jacob said. It's time. Marla hit transmit. A green light blinked. Broadcasting. But somewhere, deep beneath the city, alarms began to wail. The wolves had awakened. And the hunters were no longer patient. The transmission went out like a spark in a room full of gasoline. Across abandoned frequencies and broken airwaves, the truth spread, grainy video feeds of human experimentation, spliced recordings of the voice that had lured survivors to Sector 9, and images of the hybrid infected confined in sterile labs. Marla's message ended with a simple sentence. We are not alone in the dead zone. We never were. And with that, everything changed. Within minutes, Elias picked up the signal at the police station. He stood frozen as the evidence played, survivors gathering behind him, silent and wide-eyed. Even Lena, who had clung to hope like a shield, looked shaken. They were using us, she whispered. This whole time. It's a harvest, Elias said. They test us, watch us, see who cracks. Who breaks. Then they take what's left. The children had begun to cry. The sound of that, real fear, no longer from infected, but from the truth, echoed deeper than any scream. Caleb looked up at Elias. What do we do now? He didn't have an answer. Back at the gas station, Jacob was pacing, hand clenched around his rifle. "We shouldn't have sent that. Now they know we've seen everything." "They already knew," Marla said. "But now they know we're not afraid to expose them." Theo sat against a broken cooler, watching the street. "They'll come. They're already here," Jacob muttered. A distant mechanical hum rolled over the city. Not infected. Not a horde. Engines. Drones. Theo snapped upright. "Get down." A sleek, black drone the size of a small dog swept past the broken station window. A red light blinked under its shell. Surveillance, and tracking. Seconds later, the building across the street exploded. Shattered brick rained down in a thunderclap of smoke and fire. "They're targeting the signal origin," Marla shouted. "They're triangulating." Jacob grabbed the drive from her hands. "We can't stay here. We run." "Regroup," Marla protested. "This was our proof." "I said move," Jacob roared. They ducked out the back and ran into the alleyways, fire and dust following behind them. The city had turned against them completely. No more shelter. No more hiding. Now, it was a race. At the police station, Lena grabbed Elias's shoulder. "They'll come here next. They'll trace it back." "I know. We have to move, now." Elias nodded, turning to the gathered survivors. "Everyone, pack light. Leave behind what you can't carry. We go north, toward Sector 9. Gasps rippled through the group. "Why would we go there?" someone shouted. "It's a trap." "Exactly," Elias said. "It's where they expect us to die. But now we know the truth. And they don't know what we're willing to do." Lena narrowed her eyes. "What are we willing to do?" He looked at her and didn't blink. "Whatever it takes." The sun never broke through the clouds as the survivors filed into the streets. The air smelled like burnt metal. Distant explosions rumbled like war drums. Behind them, the police station sat in silence, ready to be burned like every place before it. Jacob's group rejoined them near the old water plant, breathless and filthy. "Mall's gone," Theo reported. "Drones flattened it." "We've got footage, but the drive's corrupted," Marla added. "Too much heat. We're back to word of mouth." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we tell our story the old way." He turned to the group. "Sector 9 is where this ends. One way or another. You don't have to follow me. But if you do, don't look back." One of the teenagers from the group stepped forward, holding a crowbar. "I'm tired of running," she said. "Let's end this." And just like that, others stepped up beside her. The children. The elders. The wounded. 50 souls. Still standing. Still human. They marched through ruins, using sewer tunnels and back alleys. The roads had grown quiet again, too quiet. No infected. No drones. No resistance. It felt like the eye of a storm. As they reached the edge of Sector 9, a massive barricade rose before them, metal walls, guard towers, and searchlights. It hadn't been built by survivors. This was military grade. Reinforced. Sealed. A fortress. Inside, lights flickered. Voices echoed through speakers. Then the gate hissed open. No warning. No threat. An invitation. "Go slow," Elias whispered. They entered cautiously, weapons raised. Sector 9 was no ruin. It was active. Generators hummed. Drones hovered silently overhead. The buildings had power, water, and operational comms arrays. And in the center of it all, a platform surrounded by screens, antennas, and a single white tent. From the tent, a man emerged. Clean clothes. Calm face. No mask. "I'm glad you came," he said. "You've passed every test." Elias stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Someone who still believes in humanity. And knows it must be refined." Jacob leveled his gun. "You've killed hundreds." The man didn't flinch. "We preserved them. The ones who mattered. You are among them." Elias spat at his feet. "We're not your experiment." "No," the man said. "You're the future." And then the towers lit up. Hundreds of infected stood behind the walls, but not wild. Controlled. Their eyes glowed faint red. The man raised a small device. "One final test," he said. "Prove you're ready." Then the gate behind them closed. And the countdown began. The countdown blared across the plaza. 14 minutes and 57 seconds. 14 minutes and 56 seconds. Elias stared at the device in the man's hand. So small. So simple. A single button, wired to horrors unimaginable. Behind the scientist, rows of infected stood perfectly still, twitching, hungry, but controlled. Their eyes glowed faint red in the light, expressions blank. Tools, not threats. Weapons waiting for a command. "I told you," the man said calmly, "this is evolution. Control the rage, direct the fear. The infected can be repurposed. And the survivors, those who adapt, will rebuild." "You're insane," Jacob growled, gun aimed. "You turned people into puppets." "No. I gave them purpose," the man replied. "They were already broken. I just helped them become something useful." "You mean obedient," Marla hissed. "I mean alive," he snapped, voice rising. The old world died screaming. Chaos. Despair. This is order. You're not here to destroy it, you're here to join it. 13 minutes and 45 seconds. Theo stepped forward, lowering his gun slightly. "And if we refuse?" The man didn't hesitate. "Then the city resets. All of it. Everyone here, gone." Elias looked at the children gathered behind him. At Caleb, clinging to Lena's hand. At the dozens of exhausted, dirty, determined survivors who had come this far. "No," Elias said softly. "We didn't come all this way to kneel." The man's eyes darkened. "Then die on your feet." He raised the device. Jacob fired. The shot rang out like thunder. The man staggered, dropping the control. Before it could hit the ground, Theo dove forward and caught it. The platform erupted in chaos. Sirens blared. The controlled infected suddenly twitched, confused, some falling to their knees, others growling low and uncertain. "System override," a synthetic voice said from the speakers. "Remote control lost. Emergency protocol initiated. 11 minutes and 59 seconds. Shut it down." Marla shouted, sprinting to the tent's command terminal. She plugged in her scavenged hard drive and began typing furiously. Jacob and Lena led the survivors into defensive positions, shielding the children and flanking the towers. A hiss echoed across the plaza, doors opening. Infected began pouring in. Not the controlled ones, these were feral. Starved. Real. The forgotten ones. Theo held up the control unit. "I think I can reverse it. Maybe turn their own horde against them." "Do it." Elias yelled. "We hold this line." Gunfire exploded. The survivors fought with everything they had, bats, knives, scrap-built flamethrowers. They'd faced death before, but never like this. Not while staring into the heart of the machine that had played God. Marla screamed over the noise. Almost there. I'm inside their mainframe. The plaza ran red. Lena was dragged down, but Elias pulled her back. Theo took a gash across the arm but stayed up. Even the older survivors fought like warriors. Now! Marla yelled. She smashed the return key. All the controlled infected froze. Their red eyes blinked. Then, turned blue. The voice returned. Override accepted. Target, hostile entities outside Zone 9 perimeter. The infected turned. Snarled. And attacked their own. Drones fired. Turrets activated. But it was chaos, infected tearing through labs, scientists trying to flee, gates opening where they shouldn't. Marla had destroyed the chain of command. Jacob grabbed the others. Evac route. There's a tunnel through the platform. They sprinted, weaving through fire and blood. Elias stayed at the rear, watching as the once flawless experiment crumbled beneath its own arrogance. A tower fell. An explosion sent fireballs into the sky. Then he turned and followed. 1 week later. The survivors emerged into the outskirts, the edge of what had once been the final dead zone. They found trees. Rivers. Untouched land. No walls. No drones. Just sky. Some wept. Others dropped to their knees in disbelief. Lena stood beside Elias, clutching his hand. Is it really over? For us, he said. For now. Marla was rebuilding a new transmitter, this time with one message. To all survivors. Sector 9 has fallen. We are free. The experiment has ended. You are not alone. Caleb sat near the edge of the hill, drawing in the dirt with a stick. He looked up at Jacob and smiled. Are we safe now? Jacob crouched beside him. Not yet. Then why are you smiling? Jacob ruffled the boy's hair. Because now we have a chance. In the ruins of Sector 9, someone else emerged from beneath rubble, bruised, burned, but alive. The scientist. He limped through the fire, clutching a small case, inside, one last prototype. A drone descended beside him. Command. Awaiting orders. He coughed, bloodied but grinning. Initiate Phase 2. And in the distance, in zones not yet awakened. Red eyes blinked open. End of story.